For 3 years, this man sat in the player box of Roger Federer. Before that, he worked with Pete Sampras. He has watched elite tennis from the inside longer than almost anyone alive, and he is not a man who gets excited easily. Last week, on live television, Paul Annacone could not stop talking about a 21-year-old from the Philippines. Here is the strange part. The thing he kept circling back to was not her forehand. It was not the scoreline. It was not even the fact that she had just taken apart a 4-time Grand Slam champion in 76 minutes. It was something almost nobody watching that match actually noticed. Naomi Osaka is a former world number 1. She has won 4 majors. She hits the ball as cleanly as anyone who has ever played on the WTA Tour. In the semi-final in Washington, she lost 6-4, 6-2, and it was over so fast that the broadcast had time to fill. So Annacone filled it. And what he said was not what you would expect from a man who had just watched a young player win. Because in the middle of all that praise, he pointed out a weakness. Out loud, on camera. About the player, everyone in that studio was celebrating. He said she is vulnerable. Not was. Is. And then he said, the sentence that turns that weakness into the most interesting thing in women is tennis right now. A sentence that quietly explains how a player ranked outside the top 25 walked into a WTA 500 event and knocked down 4 seeded players in a row. 3 things are going to come out of this. First, the exact weakness Annacone named. Second, why that weakness is not a flaw at all, and why calling it one completely misses the point. And third, the line he dropped almost casually that reads like a blueprint for how the entire tour is going to have to change to deal with her. Most of the coverage you saw last week showed you the trophy and the tears and the flag. That is the easy story. This is the other one. Because before I show you what he saw, you need to understand what was actually happening on the other side of that net. Naomi Osaka did not lose that match. Eala took it from her. To understand why Annacone reacted the way he did, forget the trophy for a second. Forget the celebration. Forget the ranking. In modern women's tennis, there is a quiet war being fought that has almost nothing to do with how hard you hit the ball. It is about time. Who has it? Who steals it? Who runs out of it first? Think about it this way. When a big hitter blasts a forehand at 78 miles per hour, the danger is not really the speed of the ball. The danger is what the speed does to your feet. You get less time to read it, less time to set up, less time to choose. Eventually, you stop choosing at all, and you just react. And when a player is reacting instead of choosing, she starts making decisions that are half a beat late, and half a beat late is how matches get lost. That is the whole business model of Naomi Osaka. Take the time away. Make you rush, win. In Washington, someone took the time away from her. So, who is she? Eala is a left-hander from the Philippines. She grew up training at the Rafa Nadal Academy in Mallorca, far from home, from the age of 13. In 2022 she won the girls' singles title at the US Open, the first player from her country ever to do it. In 2025, she showed up at the Miami Open as a wild card and beat Jelena Ostapenko, then Madison Keys, then Iga Swiatek, before losing in the semifinal. At the time, most people filed that under great story, wild week, moving on. That was the mistake. Because here is what happened in Washington last week, and I want you to hear all 4 of these in a row, because the order matters. Round 1, she beat Zheng Qinwen, the Olympic gold medalist. Round 2, she beat Leylah Fernandez, the 7th seed and the defending champion of that tournament. Quarterfinal, she beat Elina Svitolina, the 2nd seed. Semifinal, she beat Naomi Osaka, the 3rd seed. 4 matches. 3 seeds. 1 Olympic champion. 1 week. That is not a hot streak. A hot streak is when the ball keeps landing on the line. This is something else, because those 4 players do not play the same way at all. Zheng is raw power. Fernandez is a scrappy lefty, who never gives you the same ball twice. Svitolina is a wall who makes you hit one more. Osaka is flat, heavy, first strike tennis. 4 completely different problems. Same result every time. And that is exactly why the reaction from Annacone matters more than the reaction from anyone else. This is not a hype account on social media. This is the coach who managed the late career of Roger Federer, the years when Federer had to win with intelligence instead of raw physical edge. Annacone spent his professional life studying the exact question of how a player wins when the obvious tools are not enough. So when a man like that stops mid-segment and starts breaking down a player ranked 28 inches the world, that is a signal. And if you are watching this, and you already had a feeling that something about her game does not quite add up, that instinct is correct. Stay with it. What comes next is the part where the feeling turns into evidence. And if you want the rest of this story when the US Open makes it even more obvious, the subscribe button is doing a lot of quiet work for you right now. Because that brings us to the first thing Annacone actually pointed out, and honestly, it sounds like an insult until you understand what he meant by it. Here is what he said, live, minutes after she had dismantled a 4-time major champion. He said she is vulnerable on serve. Read that again. He said it on national television, about the player he had just spent an entire segment praising, in the moments after she reached the biggest final of her life. If you only caught that one line, you would think he was hedging. Being polite. Adding a small criticism so the praise sounded balanced. He was not hedging. He was setting up the most interesting thing anyone has said about Eala all year. And on paper, he is right. Watch her serve and you will see it. She is not blasting anybody off the court. The next day, in the biggest final of her career, against the third best player on the planet, she hit 0 aces. 0. She hit 3 double faults. If you handed a scout that stat line with no name attached, the scout would tell you this player is going to get broken repeatedly by anyone in the top 10. Now here is the number that breaks your brain. In that same match, she won 84.4% of the points behind her first serve. 38 out of 45. On the other side of the net, Jessica Pegula, world number 3, won 56.5% behind hers. So the player with 0 aces controlled her service games. And the player who was supposed to be the safer server got taken apart on hers. How does that happen? How does a woman who cannot hit a single unreturnable serve dominate the one part of the match that is supposedly her weak point? Hold that question. It gets worse. Go back to the semifinal against Osaka. Early in the first set, they traded breaks. Normal. 2 good players feeling each other out. And then for the rest of that match, across the remainder of the first set and the entire second set, Eala did not face a single break point. Not one. Against Naomi Osaka. Against one of the most punishing return games in the history of the sport. Against a player whose whole plan is to stand inside the baseline and take a slower serve and hit it back through you. 76 minutes. 0 break points after the opening exchange. So if the serve is the weakness, why did the best possible opponent for exploiting that weakness never once get her hands on it? This is where it stops being about one match, because the pattern keeps repeating and it keeps repeating against the exact type of player who should be immune to it. Svitolina, the second seed, 6-3, 6-4. Osaka, the third seed, 6-4, 6-2. Those 2 wins pushed her to 7 victories over top 10 players in the 2026 season, which puts her level with Elena Rybakina and Alina Svitolina. Think about what that sentence actually means. A player who began that week ranked 28 inches the world has beaten as many top 10 opponents this season as players who live in the top 10 themselves. You do not do that by accident 7 times. And you definitely do not do it while carrying a weakness that a former coach of Roger Federer is willing to name on live television. So one of 2 things has to be true. Either Annacone is wrong about the serve, which is unlikely, given that he watched it in real time with a camera on him and a career of credibility behind him, or the weakness is real, and it does not matter. And if a weakness is real and does not matter, then we are not talking about a weakness at all. We are talking about something the entire tour has been looking at from completely the wrong angle. That is only half of what he said. The second half is the part that flips this whole thing over, and it is the reason coaching teams around the WTA are going to be watching that Osaka match frame by frame between now and the US Open. Now watch what he does with that sentence. Yes, the serve is vulnerable. And then he asks the question nobody in that studio was ready for. How many players on this tour are actually equipped to do anything about it? Because to attack that serve, you cannot just stand there and swing hard. You have to solve 3 problems at the same time, and they interfere with each other. Problem 1. She is a lefty. Her serve curves the wrong way for almost everyone. Roughly 9 out of every 10 players you face on tour are right-handed, so the returns you have grooved for 15 years, the muscle memory, the split-second geometry of where the ball is going to be, all of it is slightly wrong against her. Not massively wrong. Slightly. And slightly is enough. Problem 2. The ball arrives slower. And here is the trap, because slower feels like a gift. Your brain tells you there is time, there is room, you can set up and really hit this one. So you take a bigger swing, and a bigger swing takes longer, and now you are the one who is late. Problem 3. And this is the one Annacone put his finger on. To actually hurt her, you have to take that slower ball and generate the pressure yourself. You have to step in, take it early, cut the time down and put it back on her before she can reset. You have to manufacture urgency out of nothing, into a left-handed angle, off a ball that is inviting you to do the exact opposite. Almost nobody on the WTA has trained for that specific combination. Why would they? There is no other player on tour who presents it. And if you do not solve it, Annacone told us exactly what happens next. She gets back to the baseline. And then she runs you around like a yo-yo. Sit with that image for a second, because it is the whole video. A yo-yo does not escape. It goes out, and it comes back, and it goes out again, and the person holding the string is barely moving. That is what the last hour of a match against Eala looks like from the other side. You are not being overpowered. You are being spent. And the worst part is that every single ball feels hittable, right up until your legs stop cooperating in the third set. Here is the analogy that made this click for me. Her serve is an unlocked door at the end of a maze. Technically, anyone can walk through it. It is not even guarded. Annacone said so on television, for free, to millions of people. He gave the tour the key. The problem is that almost nobody can get through the maze to reach the door. The lefty spin, the slower pace that punishes you for respecting it, the requirement to take time back on your own initiative instead of being handed it. That is the maze. And every opponent who tries to smash straight through it ends up on the far side of the court, out of position, watching a ball land on the line. So flip everything you thought when you clicked on this video. You came in assuming Eala won because she played better. That is the normal explanation. It is also wrong, or at least it is so incomplete that it hides the real story. She did not beat Naomi Osaka by out-hitting her. Nobody out-hits Naomi Osaka. She beat her by forcing Osaka to play a version of tennis that Osaka was never built to play. She turned the match into a problem that her opponent had no training for. And Annacone closed the whole thing with a line that I think is the truest thing anybody has said about her. He said she committed fully to who she is, as a player and as a person, and that this clarity about how she needed to play was worth more than all the power Osaka could bring. Clarity beat power. On a hard court. In a semifinal. In 76 minutes. I want to know what you think about that, because this is the part where reasonable people split. Some of you are going to say this is a genuine structural problem for the tour and the top 10 is in real trouble. Others are going to say give it 6 months, the coaching staffs will figure it out, they always do. Tell me which one you are in the comments, because I read them and this specific question is the one I am most curious about right now. And if that all still sounds like theory to you, it is not. Because the exact thing Annacone described had already happened 4 times that week. And it happened once more the following day, in a final that took 2 days to finish. So let us test it. If Annacone is right, we should not only see this against Osaka. We should see it against anybody who cannot solve that maze. Regardless of ranking, regardless of style, regardless of how much better they are supposed to be. Evidence 1. The Osaka match itself. 6-4, 6-2, 76 minutes. After the opening exchange of breaks, 0 break points conceded against one of the heaviest ball strikers the sport has produced. Osaka never got a single look at the door. Evidence 2, and this is the one that should genuinely make a top 10 coach uncomfortable. The final. Jessica Pegula, world number 3, top seed, chasing her 12th career title. She wins the first set 6-4. She goes up a break in the second. Then the sky opens over Washington, and there is rain and lightning and a 3-hour wait, and eventually officials suspend the match overnight with Pegula ahead. Everything favored Pegula. The score, the experience, the ranking, the crowd, the overnight break that gives a veteran time to reset and a 21-year-old time to get nervous. They came back Monday afternoon. From 4-6, 4-3 down, Eala won the last 9 games of the match. 9 straight. She took the second set 6-4, and then she won the third set 6-love and gave up 8 points doing it. 8. Across an entire set against the third-ranked player in the world. That is not momentum. That is the yo-yo, at full speed, in real time, on the biggest stage of her life. Pegula did not collapse. Pegula got walked into the maze and could not find her way back out. Final score, 4-6, 6-4, 6-love. First WTA Tour singles title of her career, and the first ever won by a player from the Philippines. Evidence 3. Sample size. One match is luck. One tournament is a hot week. So look at the season. Since June, she has beaten Iga Swiatek, Elena Rybakina, Alina Svitolina, and Naomi Osaka. 4 players who have won or contested the biggest titles in the sport, with 4 completely different styles, and none of them found the answer. 7 top 10 wins in 2026, from a player who started that week ranked 28 inches the world. She left it ranked 20, a career high, for the first time in her life. And now here is the detail that almost nobody reported, and it is my favorite part of this entire story. Annacone did not just discover her last week. Back in March of this year, before she had ever played Indian Wells, before the Washington title, before any of this, he was already talking about her on Tennis Channel. He brought up the win over Swiatek in Miami. He talked about the grace she showed doing it. And he said, plainly, that he liked her game and wanted to watch her keep progressing. That was 5 months ago. So what happened last week was not a man reacting to a scoreline. It was a man watching a prediction he made in March walk onto a court in August and prove itself against a 4-time major champion. That is why he could not stop talking. He was not surprised. He was confirmed. And now the US Open is coming, on the same hard courts, in the same country, with the same crowds that Pegula joked about following Eala everywhere. Every analytics team in the top 10 now has the same homework assignment. The same one Annacone read out loud, on television, to anybody who was listening. Which leaves one question, and it is much bigger than one tournament. What happens to a tour when a problem this specific shows up, and nobody has the answer yet? A year ago, she was standing on a court in Eastbourne holding 4 championship points in her first ever WTA final. She lost every one of them, and then she lost the match in a 3rd set tiebreak. That is the kind of afternoon that follows a young player around for years. Some careers never fully recover from it. Last week, in Washington, she stood on a court with the world number 3 ahead of her on the scoreboard and she did not lose another game. That is not a different player. That is the same player who finally stopped apologizing for the way she wins. So, what does this actually mean going forward? For her, everything just inverted. For her entire career, Eala has been the one doing the studying. She was the wild card, the unseeded name, the one who could show up with a plan while nobody had a plan for her. That advantage is gone now. She walks into the US Open ranked 20 inches the world, as a champion, as a name on a whiteboard in every top 10 camp. For the first time, she is the one being solved. For the tour, it is bigger than that. For more than a decade, the path to the top of women's tennis has looked like one path. Hit harder, serve bigger. Take the ball earlier. Overwhelm. What happened in Washington is living proof that there is a second road. You can go from 28 to 20 to a title without a single ace in the final, if you understand the geometry of the court better than the woman standing across from you. But here is the honest part, and I am not going to pretend otherwise. Annacone did not just praise her. He handed the tour a map. He said the door is unlocked. He described the maze. And professional coaching staffs are very, very good at solving maps once somebody draws them. So the real question is not whether Eala is good. We answered that with 7 top 10 wins and a trophy. The question is what happens next in the race between the two of them. The tour is going to spend the next 6 months learning how to attack that serve. And she is going to spend the next 6 months building something new before they get there. Which one of those finishes first is the actual story of her career, and it starts at the US Open in a few weeks. I am going to be covering exactly that, match by match, the moment the first top 10 opponent shows up with a game plan built specifically for her. If you want to see whether it works, subscribe, because that is the video where we find out if Annacone gave away the secret or just described a problem nobody can fix. Either way, I would not want to miss it. See you there.